Hey y'all, it's Ben Capozzi again with Broad Shoulders Farm in Sutherland, Virginia, Zone 7A. And it's Friday, October 23rd, and I just wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the thinking that's gone into how we're organizing the poultry food forest. So I'll flip the camera around and we'll talk a little bit. Okay, so much as I did yesterday in the update video, I'm over here on the west end, the west side of where the orchard used to be, the former orchard. It was maintained by my wife's father-in-law, sorry, by my wife's grandfather. Sorry, I don't know why that was so difficult. Anyhow, then after he passed in the 90s, it all just kind of was left over for pasture that was bush hogged every so often each year. The grapevines completely overgrown. Lots and lots of pecan and walnut trees here, different varieties, most of them volunteer planted by the squirrels. And there were 4 big apple trees down on that end. Now there's only 3. One of them passed this year and I wasn't able to get any Scion wood, so I hate that. That variety is lost. I remember it was a pretty tasty apple. Actually, the names of all 3 of the surviving varieties are lost. I have some friends who know apples, and maybe someday in the years ahead I can get an ID from them. There's a plum tree there that I thought is dead, but still seems to keep putting out leaves each of the 2 years that I've been here, but no fruit. But it suckers like mad. But that's pretty much it in terms of what's still up here. There's a mulberry tree over in the Rooster Run that's pretty big, and my father-in-law said he'd never really seen it fruit. It's got witch's broom, which is a disease, quite badly, and I don't really know that there's much that's going to help that. So I'm planting disease-resistant varieties, but that's kind of it for what is up here, what survived. But in terms of the space that's up here, I've got a couple acres that I can work with all the way back to the tree line. And there are 2 chestnut trees back there against the tree line and some random pears in the tree line that I think are volunteers. So that's kind of the space that I've got. South is straight that way. So the orchard kind of descends, it slopes to the north, but it has excellent southern exposure. We've got pretty heavy clay soils here, heavy red clay. The farm used to be a functional dairy farm, and so tons of cow manure was dumped into the garden area up there that Grandpa Ralph used to maintain. And I'm sure some of that worked its way back here as well. At one time, there was a trailer back here where my wife's family lived for a few years while they were building their house over on the other side of the farm. There was a driveway through here. The grandparents' home is still up here. So just to kind of orient you, you can kind of get a little bit about the space. The driveway used to run around past the rooster bachelor pad, and then over that way on the other side of the garden. The soil over there is super compacted and gravelly. Like as soon as I start digging down, there is a lot of really heavy rock, which is frustrating. But I'm working on tilling that up with some daikon radish to kind of bust that up. This year there's been no heavy equipment back here, which is great. I'm trying to keep it that way. Moving on. So let's talk about the overall organization. I talked a bit yesterday about it, but my original thinking, or before my big breakthrough that I talked about yesterday, was to just kind of do this organized as stair steps, with your shorter species up front, closest to the south, and your taller species moving back towards the tree line. And that is still kind of essentially what I have done. This row right here is pretty much the front row. This is all going to be a walking path, this alleyway through here. And I also want to plant some asparagus in here probably that I can harvest from. And when we get the fence set up here to fence in the winter quarters for the birds, I'll probably do some espaliered fruit trees along this, as well as a mix of other plants and some pollinator plantings as well, some flowers and perennials. But the front row, the very first row, is pretty much this one right here. And as I talked the other day, it's a mix of bush hazelnuts and bush cherries, some serviceberry, blackberries, raspberries, blueberries, going all the way back down there. So nothing really that gets more than 8 to 10 feet tall, and some of it quite shorter than that. So it's not really going to shade out anything behind it. Speaking of what goes behind it, well, slightly taller things. So here I've got a row that starts out as pawpaws and it goes all the way down towards the telephone pole there, or the power line pole there, and it turns into persimmon trees, Hachia persimmon trees, which get to be, again, 12 to 15 feet tall, so a little bit taller than the front row, but nothing super tall. Then we've got these walnuts and hackberries and locust trees. I may thin out some of the smaller ones, but in general, this is being left as is. And as we go down a little bit that way, you can see there's another volunteer black walnut tree with another hackberry and a willow oak. And for this row, not everything is going to be as tall as the walnuts are going to be, but I've tried to work with it. So I've got a Stubbs mulberry, and then I've got there's another Stubbs mulberry down there. And then over here, because it's got such great southern exposure, even though the ground slopes away from the sun, this is where there's going to be actually quite a few apple trees on 20-foot centers, 20-foot spacing. I think I'm going to get a block of 12 in here, kind of reproducing the pattern up there. These older apple trees that Grandpa Ralph either planted or maintained, I don't think they were on any kind of special rootstock. It certainly wasn't a dwarfing rootstock. It may have been semi-dwarf, because these trees are 20, 25 feet tall. The one behind this one that's fallen over is actually upwards of 20 feet tall. So they may have even been root grafted onto just a native a seedling rootstock. So, but I'm going to come in with them a little bit tighter, and like I said, blocks of, I think I can get 12 apple trees in this space in here. And I'll probably mix it up, add some pears and whatnot as well, just for variety's sake. And there are other apple trees going in other spots in the paddock on the other side of the rooster run, and the paddock up around the tenant house, which I talked about yesterday. But again, the idea is shorter things up here, getting taller, getting taller, getting taller as we go all the way back here to the back of the orchard. And what I've got back here is actually, right now, I only have in a couple persimmon trees, but mostly chestnut whips. So you can see a little bit of straw right there, straw mulch that I've got set up, and that continues in a line all the way back pretty much to that quite tall red oak. I think that's a red oak, I'm not sure. And that is on 30-foot centers, and it's chestnuts, Chinese chestnuts, with a deer magnet persimmon all the way in the back. That's actually the cultivar name. It's an American persimmon. Produces a pretty large persimmon for an American variety. It's about 1.5 to 2 inches, and it drops very late in the season. Like, it starts dropping in November, which is fantastic. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to work with persimmons up here. I've also got a Korean persimmon, a Niu Nai. This is a variety Niu, N-A-I, that also gets to be about 25 feet tall or so. So I think it's going to fit in quite nicely with the chestnuts and not be out-competed or shaded by them. And again, I've got them on 30-foot centers, so I think that's plenty of room. And they'll complement these chestnuts that are here. What I'd like to ultimately have is a nice kind of covered, shady, sun-dappled, that sounds poetic, root all the way back here. where if I need to drive vehicles or something, I can, but nothing is going to be coming through the orchard and further compacting that soil. But we do have a lane back here, and it wraps around as well, so you can access it from the road up there if you need to. And then I have one more, turn and face the sun. Sorry. Up here, I just planted a second deer magnet persimmon tree. So again, you know, the tallest trees, and those deer magnets, you know, I've seen some American persimmons that are, you know, 15 feet tall, that are 20, 25 feet tall. These are listed as going anywhere from 30 to 60 feet tall. And in either of those scenarios, I've got the room for it, so it's fine. I have a feeling they're going to stay a little bit smaller, but that is a-okay either way. And I'm putting in 1, 2, and I think I've got room down there for a third Bergamble oak, which is a small, maybe 20 to 25 foot tall oak that actually has kind of a narrow crown. It's more upright than outward growing, and it produces a really low tannin acorn, which I'm excited about. One, to see if the chickens are into them. I think it'll be okay for them because of the low tannins, but also I'm just interested in my own sort of making acorn flour in much the same way that I'm interested in what's going on with the chestnuts. Absolutely love chestnuts, and I was really excited to see that we had some here on the farm that I guess Grandpa Ralph planted. I don't think they would be volunteers. If they're volunteers, I don't know where they volunteered from. I don't know where there are any other mother trees, but be that as it may, so that's kind of exciting. But and so yeah, just to kind of give you again an idea about what I was thinking when I started thinking about how to organize the orchard. And sun aspect was one of the ways that I was thinking about doing it, you know, stadium style, shorter plants coming to taller plants so that nothing blocks out the sun for anything behind it. Another thing that I thought about was harvest or ripening dates, and this is a thing that I learned from Stefan Sobkowiak, who has a good YouTube channel for his farm up in Canada, the permaculture orchard at Miracle Farms, Les Fermes des Miracles. It's a very beautiful place. I spent a week up there a few years ago and learned quite a bit from Stefan. But if you watch Stefan's documentary or just follow his channel and learn other things from him, his big innovation was that he organized his orchard not around, well, you know, it'd be nice to have this here. I like this tree and I don't know where I'm going to put it. Or here's all the varieties, you know, here's an orchard and they're all one of maybe 3 varieties. Not only is his orchard very diverse, but he organized it by ripening date, by harvest date. He called it a grocery store style, where basically he put everything, and it's a real interesting mix of plants, annual vegetables, perennial shrubs, woody trees, etc., woody plants, but they all have a similar harvest date within like 2 weeks or so that when people came to his orchard, he could say, oh, it's the first week of October, you're going to go to aisle 7 and pick anything that you want. And then they come back after Thanksgiving. He says, oh, great. It's the last week of November, first week of December. You're going to head to aisle 14. Everything there is ripe. And that was a really, really, I think, clever and ingenious way to organize his orchard. And I did something similar to that at my home garden and orchard, which I'm going to do a video about here one day. So just kind of thinking about organizing things by harvest and ripening date, organizing things by solar aspect. There's other ways, of course, to organize things. You can do it kind of randomly. You can organize things by family, so all the apples and pears are together, you know, all the things in the rosacea family are together. You can organize things where all the nuts are together. You can organize things where all the stone fruits are together, so your pears and your peaches and your cherries and your apricots and your plums are all together. I mean, there's lots of different ways to think about organizing how your plants go. And so I talked about yesterday the kind of the overall thing, so I'm not going to recapitulate any of that stuff. I'm not going to go over that again, but you know, we're basically doing a mix of plants that grow well together. You hear that kind of hyena's laugh? that rooster, I think, is one of my Vorwerk roosters I got from a private breeder, and I've never had a rooster. That's it, crow like that. Oh, it's not the Vorwerk. No, it is. It's the Vorwerk guy up there. Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it, I love it. But anyhow, so I mean, I'm kind of doing a mix of plants that grow well together in a guild system. So elderberries and pawpaws and black locust and mulberry and hazelnut and persimmon. They all kind of complement each other. And over on another part of the farm, we've got apples and pears and roses and raspberries. You know, you can do tons of research on different families and such and kind of learn more about that. But I just wanted to talk about another thing that I was thinking about, and it may help you when you're thinking about how you want to set up your orchard, whether it's for people or for poultry or for any other animal companions you may be working with. Okay, I don't want to talk your ear off, just wanted to put that out there. Questions, comments, helpful critique, always welcome. And you can always follow the farm at Broad Shoulders Farm on Instagram and Facebook. And wherever you are, I hope that you are happy and healthy, and please stay that way. All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye.